There we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce Amanda Ebert. She's spoken for our research rounds once before, but we're very excited to have her back in here speak again. Amanda wears several hats and prides herself on being an educator and a lifelong learner. She teaches adapted physical activity, movement, and health classes at several post-secondary institutions across Edmonton. She also supports various research projects through the Faculty of Kinesiology, Sport and Recreation, and the rest of her time is spent working in the community as a recreational and physical activity consultant with Equality Fitness and Recreation. In this role, Amanda supports individuals living with impairment, many living with autism, to pursue meaningful sport and physical activity experiences in ways that work for them. So without further ado, please welcome Amanda.
Thanks, Lori, and thank you everyone for coming. I'll just get my screen shared here. Perfect. Does that look good, Lori?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Great. I was really excited to be asked to come back to Autism Research Rounds to chat again about using physical activity as an ally. And I am anthropomorphizing physical activity, and I'm very aware of that. Now I'll kind of get into at the end why it is that I choose to do that, but it is such an absolutely critical launching point for us to have many conversations and advocacy and see improvements in the quality of life for people living with autism. So I really do consider it to be an ally and something that we tend to neglect a little bit too much when it comes to supporting children, youth, and adults living on the autism spectrum. So you've seen the learning outcomes already for this session, so I'm not going to read them all out for you. But really throughout today, I just want to highlight key pieces of evidence, both anecdotal and empirical, that show the significant role that movement experiences can have in the lives of those living with autism. And I say movement experiences because sometimes we don't want to use the word exercise, sport, or physical activity because that turns people away from wanting to actually try things or be engaged. So I like to use movement experiences because that can be very broad, it can be very subjective, and it can kind of go different places that maybe the type of programming needs to go. I will share just a few strategies and learnings and some stories from my work at Equality Fitness and Recreation, so ways in which we have been engaging people with autism to be physically active in many different ways, whether individual or group type settings, whether they're high functioning or low functioning, and whether it is stuff that they asked to do initially, and how we got them to the point where now they are motivated to participate on their own. So I'll just take just a quick minute to talk to you a little bit about Equality Fitness and Recreation, who we are and what we do. I think that's really important to kind of set the stage for who I am and sharing with you a little bit about the work that I do. I'll share with you some of the evidence from research that talks about the benefits of physical activity and the impact of that on the lives of people living with autism. And then again, share some more empirical evidence, and we'll have some time for discussions and questions after that. So Equality Fitness and Recreation, we are very unique. We are an organization that has no brick and mortar. So we are completely mobile, meaning my garage, my basement, and a storage locker is full of any kind of equipment you could ever imagine. And every day I load up my SUV with things that I'm going to need for that particular group of people I'm seeing that day, and travel all over the capital region to meet them wherever it is that they want to be active. So this may be in people's homes. This may be, quite often for me this time of year, it's the River Valley, because you can do a lot in the River Valley. It might be long-term care facilities. It might be community recreation centers. It could be West Edmonton Mall I'm going to later today. It really depends on what it is that people want to do. And we work with people of all ages. Right now, our youngest is 4 and our oldest is 104, and all different types of health situations, and just a wide variety of folks with different stories. So it's quite individualized. Everything looks quite different. And it's very hard to explain exactly what it is that we do because of the diversity of the people that we see and the different approaches that we take to support them. So again, this is just a few photos and snapshots. So the unique thing about us is that we go to you. So if someone says, my child really wants to join a soccer team, but they don't understand the rules of soccer, or the soccer coach doesn't understand how to support my child, that might be an instance where we would step in and support to sort of bridge that gap. It might be someone says, my mom's living in long-term care and she's lonely and needs some exercises and maybe some rec therapy type programming. Can you support with that? Well, we'll do those types of things. Or, my youth wants to try new recreation places, but they're nervous to go with their friends, or they haven't been invited by their friends. Can you support in bridging that gap? So it really looks very different depending what we do. But these components that are there in the green are really a big piece of it. And I have to really stress the advocacy piece. It's a lot of advocacy in the work that we do, as we tend to learn more about the barriers that people are facing, the barriers that even community organizations may not know exist out there. So we can help to bring some awareness to that and then support them to work through to create just a society that's a lot more open and accepting of diverse bodies and minds. So our team, it's quite small. That's 4 of 6 of us in that image there. But we have a very diverse team with very unique skill sets. So when someone contacts us, kind of goes through Bobby Joe, the head of the organization, and she sort of filters down to whoever she thinks has the experience and credentials to best support that family. We always do a meet and greet with them first for free, just to kind of get touch. Are we really the right place? Are there other places you want to go? Do I need to pull in somebody else for my team or an external referral? Maybe we need a physio, things like that. So we will just try and individualize and support people as best as they need. We're huge on collaborating. I really think we have a siloed society that's really quite sad when we have so many amazing people with incredible backgrounds, and we tend not to work together as much as we can. So we love if there's other organizations or individuals who want to collaborate in any way to enhance quality of life of people living with disabilities. And this is kind of just a model that we adapted through a research study that was done in 2013. I think it started even before that. This is really how we end up doing what we do. So I'm going to kind of break this down for you a little bit later. But what we find is that every situation is so unique. And as long as we roughly follow this model as a guideline, to get us to identifying different things that are going on, to be able to implement supports for people to have successful, whether it's transition to the community or just moving experiences. Addressing each of these categories really can help us learn a lot more about the individuals and then find ways in which we can help them to be successful. So I just have a quick video to show you a little bit about what my job looks like, because it's a lot easier to see it than it is to explain.
I'm not sure if there's supposed to be audio, Amanda, but I'm just seeing video. I'm not sure about other people.
What's that, Lori? Sorry?
I'm not sure if there's supposed to be audio attached to the video. Like I heard music at the beginning, but I'm only seeing video now with no audio. I don't know about other people if they can hear it.
Okay, there's no speaking in it at least, so there is music, but if you can't hear that, I guess you're not really missing too much out of it. But thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure why that is. So as you can see, no fun whatsoever in my job, in my day-to-day, like at all. It's truly the most amazing work I could be doing and job I could possibly have, is getting to know people on such an individual level and supporting them to accomplish whatever type of goals it is that they want to have. And I have worked with people on everything you can imagine, which has been really amazing. Right. Okay. So just look a little bit at some of the evidence that's out there around physical activity and physical activity as an intervention or a support. So first of all, I really want to stress, we all know this, but exercise itself is evidence-based. Okay, there's not a person out there who doesn't believe that exercise is bad for you. Of course, there could be certain situations or certain moments that maybe types of exercises are contraindications, of course, but in general, we know moving our bodies is healthy. It's healthy for our minds. It's healthy for our bodies themselves. We need to be doing it. Exercise itself is evidence-based, yet we still tend to not make it a priority in our own lives, but definitely it's not made a priority in the lives of people living with autism. But when we look at the literature, there is evidence that shows that doing low to medium intensity cardio actually reduces stereotypical behaviors. Okay, now this can be mixed, and of course, I'm giving you the general gist from the research. There's obviously individual exceptions to all of this, different stories that people have, but they do find that high intensity cardio work actually does not. Which I found to be quite interesting. It is something that I've tried to pay attention to when I'm working with individuals. Participation in physical activity intervention has been shown to increase behavioral and academic performance. And again, that is for everybody. That is not specific to kids with autism. But this is why I get so upset when I hear stories about recess being cut out as a punishment, or phys ed being taken over by, the wellness curriculum. That means sitting in a classroom, not letting kids go out and move their bodies. It's really difficult to hear these stories because we have so much evidence that tells us if you get up and you move and you do different things, your brain proteins are firing, your attention to detail is better, you're able to focus on your work more, you're able to follow instructions more, and yet we keep removing physical activity opportunities from specifically children in school, but in general, we tend to see this go away, and that just doesn't work. It's not beneficial for anybody. And then there is lots of evidence that children living with autism can attain the same levels of flexibility, strength, aerobic capacity, and BMI as neurotypical kids their age. One of the biggest reasons we see such a gap is that they're just not given the opportunity. And when they're younger, I've heard many stories from talking with families where this makes sense because the priorities might be on communication, they might be on toileting, they might be on independent living. And so physical activity and recreation is not seen as a priority. But what I'm hoping that you can take away from this today is that actually by including that within all the work that families are trying to do, you're going to improve all of those other goals that you have. I really like this study by Educator and colleagues where and this point to me is really critical. There is a kind of a myth around there going around that we've probably all heard many times, is that people on the autism spectrum, specifically adolescents, are unmotivated for physical activity. But what this study found was that they are unmotivated sometimes unless we can find opportunities that are meaningful. When opportunities have meaning, purpose, a sense of identity, and the affective pleasures that a lot of us do get from physical activity, well, then that motivation appears. It's there again. So it's not that they're just unmotivated and don't want to do it. It's that maybe the opportunities aren't the right ones, or they're not set up, or there's barriers in place. There's something we're misunderstanding about why it is that they seem so unmotivated to participate. Physical activity is directly linked to improving health-related quality of life. Again, no surprise here. And what they mean by health-related quality of life in this article is the physical, environmental, psychological, and social aspects of life. So when people are involved in movement experiences of some sort, they do see benefits on all facets, all domains of health. And then there was one meta-analysis that talked about how physical activity leads to decreased rates of stereotypical and repetitive behaviors. I know for some families that's a main objective that they're trying to work towards. Other families not so much, but physical activity has been shown to benefit that. Again, improves cognitive performance, improves classroom performance and attention, and improves self-regulation. So there's all these benefits. We know that it's good for us. Yet when we actually get out into the community, we know that adolescents with autism are less active than their same age peers. That is the same with childhood as well in general. Exercise and physical activity are often overlooked as therapeutic support, and they really are such a fantastic support to have within all of your intervention plans. And significant barriers for families and individuals exist within sport, recreation, physical activity, and physical education landscape. And if there are any parents on this call, I know that and even professionals who connect with families, you know that this is very true. Again, this is something that I work every day to try and mitigate, to build that relationship with families, to find out what are the barriers, what is holding you back. Sometimes families are just exhausted, quite frankly, with battling on all fronts, that they don't want to also do it in sport and recreation. And so that's a big piece of my role, is to say, let me take that labor off of you and let me find ways that we can make this happen. Let me research programs and opportunities. Let me put structures in place for your child to go be successful in these types of programs. And then there's a lot of conversation around this coming out, especially with the neurodivergent movement going on, but a lot of conversation about how there are such high requirements within most of our sport and physical activity settings where people are required to mask their autism and to pass as normal enough in order to gain access. And then there's more research coming out now that's talking about doing that masking act and having to make yourself pass and, hold back any kind of stimming that may want to be released when individuals are participating, actually causes a lot of emotional and psychological damage on individuals living with autism, having to try and mask all the time and pass to participate instead of going to be their authentic selves and go ahead and stim in programs and go ahead and vocalize if you need to, those types of things. So there's some really interesting work coming out around that now that has started to influence my work for sure and shift some of my perspective and thinking. So why are folks with autism not active? First of all, as I mentioned, masking is exhausting. Okay, so people don't always want to have to mask to participate. It's better to just stay home. It's better to do things in a different way or not at all. There is a very strong emphasis in our sport, physical activity, and physical education settings on learning how to talk, staying on task, engaging with others. And then there's just a general lack of knowledge that exercise is actually evidence-based and can help with those things. So, but when individuals come to programs and they're forced to engage with peers instead of that happening a little more organically on their own, or they have to sit and make eye contact when maybe that's very uncomfortable for them, some of those are reasons that people don't want to go. But then what we're missing is that actually by going to those programs, you will start to see an improvement on some of those social skills and objectives that the families may have. Again, this hidden labor piece is absolutely huge, and I see this all the time, is that parents take on an enormous amount of labor to try and find appropriate activities, and that labor really is hidden, and that's wrong. So I've talked to many families over the decades that I've worked in this field that just say, you know what, I'm just too tired. I'm working on everything else. I'm battling with the school systems, and it's just like, I don't have anything left for swimming lessons. I don't have anything left for soccer practice. And so again, this is a huge area that's really important to me, near and dear to my heart. We also do caring for the caregiver exercise programs for families to help them to be okay and to take some of that labor off of them. The experiences in school physical activity will greatly influence whether or not people continue to engage in physical activity into adulthood. And again, this trend is common across all humans. If you have negative experiences and movement experiences as a child, you are less likely to be active as an adult. So we really want to be providing those positive movement experiences, however that may look when people are younger, in order to have them be healthy adults when they're older. And then again, practitioners often neglect the affective domains. So we need to think about how it's not always just about motor skill intervention. It's not always just about improving your fitness. There are so many other positive aspects that come from physical activity participation that will actually improve quality of life for people. So sometimes we find that when we're comparing physical activity experiences for adolescents with or without autism, those with autism are less likely to report that it's a way to make friends because they probably haven't been in an environment where that's something that's encouraged or fostered or mentored with them. They don't always need the individualized instruction that we impose on them, but sometimes they do. So again, I think it's just being able to ebb and flow with that, with the individual, depending on the context and the day. And then individuals with autism are more likely to report a fear of getting hurt. And a big piece of that is that physical literacy component. If you haven't been exposed to different environments, different settings, different movement sensations on your body, that fear of then being exposed to those feelings and sensations really builds. So again, the more you can do when you're younger, the less that fear is as they get older. So a little bit about what we find at Equality Fitness and Recreation. So movement works, bottom line. Okay, we see that all of those benefits that I just discussed, we see them every day. We hear them from families on a regular basis. Okay, we don't conduct formal research. We just don't have time for the most part through the work that we do, but we know that it works. Okay, we see individuals with autism increasing expressive language, confidence, and self-advocacy. So they start to express to us in whatever way it is that they communicate, that they have needs, desires, and feelings, what those are. Over time, as they build confidence and trust with us, they're much more open to trying new things, going new places, right? This is something that all comes from having positive movement experiences. We see increased social emotional engagement, so they're a lot more open to peer connections. I see this even with practicum students, where some individuals with autism don't want anybody else at the session because it feels good with me. And eventually over time, they are more open to even having practicum students join us. But we're seeing this happen a lot faster. And then increased resilience to change in unexpected situations. As we know, this is something that individuals with autism often struggle with, and we are finding, and we see it a lot within our sessions, that I can veer away from the schedule that we set, or we can change locations. And although it may be difficult, the resilience to overcome those big feelings and those difficult situations is really improving with the individuals that we work with. We definitely see, and this is no surprise, when people are engaged in movement experiences, they have improved movement patterns, improved muscle memory, and improved sensory tolerance. So obviously decreases in hypotonia as you keep moving more. Some absolutely amazing stories. I'll show you a video in a little bit about dyspraxia and the ways in which motor planning has been enhanced, specifically by going outside and in different environments. That seems to have made a big connection. I'm inferring that based on my observations. We haven't done the study, but there's unbelievable improvements in dyspraxia. People who have been diagnosed with hypotonia their whole life are now being told by their physicians they no longer have hypotonia. And this is just really cool stuff that comes out of moving our bodies. And another thing, and this is also another area that I become a lot more interested in, is around interoception. As we know, that's another sensory system that individuals who are neurodivergent in general may struggle to understand and connect with in their bodies. So what we find is by movement experiences, physical activity, exercise, we learn about body temperature regulation. You feel different parts of hydration. And then a huge piece that I'm always working on with people is body part identification. It doesn't matter if you're 6, 16, or 60, we're always working on body part identification. So when you're doing an exercise, you can ask which part of your body do you feel it, and people eventually, with more practice, can start to identify that part of the body instead of saying my whole leg or pointing at their elbow, where that isn't where they should be feeling it. They will touch their calf, or they will be a lot more specific to the muscle groups you're actually activating, and we start to see improvements on this too. Okay. Physical activity is a bitch. I put that in quotes because that's a direct quote from one of my participants with autism. That's what he says, but he said this to me on a video that we were creating together as we were walking 5 kilometers around Horlack Park feeding the birds. So it's, again, part of that is your language. It's the way that you approach things. So if I would have said, let's go exercise in the park, this person would have shut down and we would not be going anywhere. Right? So the words you use really matter. So I generally find if you omit in most settings, again, some people are motivated by these words, but I'm very cautious of using words like exercise, sport, physical activity, or gym, because again, if people have had negative experiences, they are not excited to go do any of these things again. They're trigger words they want to avoid. So when I use things like recreation, activity, experiences, play, I don't get that resistance right away. So that really matters. Interests can be included as motivators. Obviously, I think we all know this, but it's really important to know what people are into. whether it's just getting them to engage in conversation, whether it's listening to music as you're out for a walk, including hobbies or TV shows in some way into programming. This is always a huge way to establish that connection, give you a common point of conversation, shows the individual that you know what they're interested in. I've had to watch episodes of things that I would never normally watch just because I don't know what they're referring to otherwise. So that's a piece of my job sometimes, is to watch 20 minutes of Sonic the Hedgehog or whatever it might be to try and learn about the characters so that I can engage in this kind of discussion with people after. And I always have to follow hockey. I don't always watch it, but that's definitely something I've learned. If I know how the Oilers did last night, that's always an icebreaker for a lot of the people that I work with. Again, social connection gets many of us moving. And autonomy and self-determination are also improved all through physical activity exposure. So some people, obviously we know individuals living with autism will often struggle with social connection, but in a setting where we are having a positive movement experience, that tends to, we've noticed that tends to go away over time. And now these physical activity experiences are not so bitchy. They're actually really warm and welcoming and friendly, and people really look forward to going. This is a lesson that we learned through the pandemic, is that going outside is almost always really awesome. We hit that point in the pandemic that we all recall, unfortunately, when there was just nothing to do other than going outside. You couldn't go to gyms. It was way too crowded in so many spaces. It wasn't safe for people who are immunocompromised. So we ended up just shifting our programming to be outside. And there were people who, before the pandemic, would never let us go outside. They don't like the sun, they don't like the bugs, they don't like the grass, they don't like the leaves, they don't like the snow. But when it was between doing nothing or going outside, people chose going outside. And I still, now that we're getting into, finally, hopefully winter's gone in Edmonton, I'm fingers crossed, I'm going back to these days where people just want to meet outside. So I'm in the river valley for 6 hours a day sometimes with different people doing different activities. And it's really quite amazing. But when you think about being outside and the benefits that come from that sensory wise, right, you can move on so many different surfaces. So the grass, the pavement, you can stay on paved trails, mud, water, rain, snow, ice, all of that. We learn so much through moving our bodies across different terrains that way. Okay, it's inherently unpredictable. So especially if you are able to go to different places sometimes or go on different trails, you're not always sure what's around the next bend. So that seems to support people in being like, it's okay, this is a new trail, but I know how to work on these trails and it's okay. What I've also loved seeing is that the whole family will come out and enjoy, whether I'm working with a child or an adult. Often we'll see parents or caregivers also come out and they'll go do their own thing. They're also now getting out and active, and everybody's in a better mood after you've been out in the sun for an hour. Okay, and then every season has its own opportunities. So you can be exposed to a lot of different sport and recreation opportunities all seasons of the year, which is always really amazing for new experiences. This to me has to be the core of everything that I do. The relationship that you build with people that you work with is everything. This model that I've introduced and we'll chat about again in a moment doesn't work if you don't have that relationship. And we live in such a fast-paced world, and we all want to see and support as many people as we possibly can, as quickly as we can. We have a tendency in our society to want to mass produce things that are good. But really and truly, my strongest message for working with people with autism is that it's all about quality, not quantity. It has to be quality. It just does. There's no exception to that. Trying to find other ways, trying to replicate things on a bigger scale often just leads to breakdowns. And then that just doesn't work. So some of the stuff that I always do at the beginning is, again, I mentioned that meet and greet. I find that's a really crucial time. I will give the family a form to fill in that gives me an idea of some interests, some of the things that the individual who I will be working with is afraid of or hesitant about. So that's how I can learn about some of that language. And I never go into situations thinking that I'm the expert. That's a really, really important thing for me, is that I bring my expertise, I bring my huge toolbox full of all types of things that I continue to learn as time goes on. But I am going to meet the expert, because every situation is different and every individual is an expert on their own experiences. Every family is an expert on that individual. So I always go in wanting to learn, and then I just bring my expertise to combine it with the expert and see what we can create. So I find that's a really big piece, is that I don't go in pretending that I have all the answers or know exactly what to do, because there's no recipe card for this kind of work. If you want it to go really well, it's quite diverse with everybody. Okay, so with that, the preparation piece is really big. So different families do different things to prepare. And the relationship you develop helps you learn about what that needs to look like. So I've done everything from like social stories, several of them a week, to detailed visual plans, picture documentary type things, or a quick text message that just discusses about what's going to come next. So this, for example, is a little clip from one of the social stories that I have. This is a more detailed, like a letter with pictures that I wrote to someone who would communicate more in this way, about where we're going to be going. So just getting to know that, new places are difficult for them. What's going to help this to be a positive experience for them? What will they see? What will they smell? That's that sort of thing. So this is just a little video I want to show you. This is Colin. Colin is away now, and I know his mom knows I'm showing this video and is, I think, quite connected with this group still. But Colin was one who was not interested at all in moving his body, even getting out of his house, doing different things. We had it took us a little bit of time at the beginning to get going, but once we did connect together and started figuring each other out, we saw massive improvements in all aspects of Colin's life. And he was very consistent, coming twice a week until they moved away, which was amazing. Never missed a session, and was by the end very open to trying a lot of different things. So I'll just show you this little video that highlights a bit about what Colin's experience was like. So with Colin, as I mentioned, was very, very rigid, didn't like trying new things at all, didn't like going out with people too often to do too many challenging things. And by the end, I could literally say that morning, hey, Colin, changing plans. Let's go here today to this brand new place. And by the end, he was saying, yeah, sure, whatever, because we had that trust and that relationship where he knew I would make sure he was okay. I would take care of whatever. I knew his triggers. I knew things that upset him. I would be sure that those were taken care of. If he did end up shutting down, which happened sometimes when we were out, I knew strategies to support him through that. So that trust, that relationship with him led us to do anything after that. And that he started expressing interest in volunteering and supporting, and that's leading towards independence and job skills, and all of that was really quite amazing. I think I have one more here. What's happening? No, let me change slides here. There we go. So this next one I want to show you is a little bit different. So this is Jordan. Jordan, I still work with on a regular basis. We do quite long, a couple hours a week together, which is very amazing. I need to really update this video because now we're in year 4 or 5 even. And this only goes up to year 3. And so you'll notice in this video, again, Jordan really struggles with dyspraxia, so the motor planning. So if we were out walking in the river valley and there was, a log blocking the trail, that would sometimes take Jordan up to 5 minutes to figure out, how am I going to get my body over this log? How am I going to move through this complicated situation? Or he would have an idea and then he'd start to initiate body movements and then sort of freeze up and backtrack. So you'll see some of that at the beginning of year 1 about how much he struggled. And then I will tell you now that I don't have year 4 or 5 in this video, that Jordan has done 2 half marathons. And one of them was in Vancouver. So we spent almost 2 years working with his mom to kind of backward chain all the barriers that would come to be in order to get Jordan to get on an airplane, fly to Vancouver, stay in an Airbnb, do a half marathon, and fly home, all without his mom coming. And we did it. It was a lot of planning and work, huge success. We also have been able to get him to go to the mountains on a hike, which he's very adamant will never be happening again, but I'm not giving up hope on that. He tells me repeatedly that's not happening again. And this has now led to him being able to talk about going to Universal Studios with his family. So just from where you'll see him on year 1, getting out of the house during the pandemic, being involved in different things, building that confidence, improving motor planning, improving hypotonia, improving, the way he approaches unexpected situations, has led to an unbelievably rich life and different opportunities that have come for that. So here's just a little snapshot of Jordan's journey. So I had to end with the picture of Jordan with a beer because that was a big thing for him when we were in Vancouver, is he needed to have a green beer. We didn't know what that meant. And we tried lots of different types of beer. None of them were what he was thinking. So he took a sip of a few different ones, and it was all about a green beer bottle that he saw in a hockey commercial. But that was quite an entertaining day out for us. So as you see, there's lots of improvements that are happening here. I don't know why this is doing this for me now. There we go. So what I guess I'm hoping that we can all take away from this is to think about how we can maybe shift some of our approaches into not only finding, but creating physical activity experiences that work or movement experiences for individuals living with autism. So let's just look at this model again really briefly here. We go through stage by stage. So individual and family readiness. You'll notice that it says family and individual. That's because the family is just as important to have the supports and interventions for as the individual, because again, they're taking on so much. They've been working through so many their entire lives. Families are told from the first day their child is diagnosed with autism, all the things that their kid won't be able to do and all of the deficits. And so they actually really struggle to accept that they will be able to do lots of really cool things. That's something that we learned in the research and also still see in practice. So having that relationship with the family is absolutely critical. Around community readiness. So again, if you're going to take people out into the community, you're going to try new things. You need to be sure that the community is ready for diverse bodies and minds to come in. So there's a lot of different ways to approach that. The rule for myself is I always say to myself, you've only got one chance to get this right. So what do you have to do ahead of time to be sure that the first time this individual comes into a new place, that it's going to be successful? So there's a lot of work on my end to build that relationship, to communicate with whether it's an escape room or the trampoline park or a community fitness center, recreation center, to be sure that I have everything in place, that I've thought of everything I can possibly think of to try and make that a positive experience. And you need to learn from people what can and what can't be modified, because sometimes people are really flexible and sometimes they can't be for their own reasons. And that's something really important to look at as well. So when it comes to going different places, these are just a few snapshots. You've seen lots of video clips already, but we'll go anywhere. If somebody wants to go somewhere, we will make it happen. These are places I had to put them on here and give a shout out, because all of these places have gone above and beyond to be sure that people living with autism can come, feel safe, feel welcome, and be part of it. They're willing to adjust music levels. They're willing to let you go in and take photos to make your own social stories. They're willing to take photos and send them to you. They're willing to have supports and aids go in for free. Whatever kind of things it might be, the barriers that you're facing, these people have all been absolutely amazing with us going in with a lot of different folks. So I just had to give them all shout outs on here, because I hope that people will also go and tell them that you heard about this, and they'll continue to be as wonderful as they have been. Okay, the environment, again, I always think about those little things that we sometimes take for granted, like how far is the walk from the parking lot to the front doors? That can be really big. What do the bathrooms look like? That can be really big. So just giving some thought into the actual space you're going to be in. Do I need to prepare them that there's a loud fan when you walk in the door? Do I need to prepare people that the music is on or that the music is off? We can't have their music, whatever it might be. So that's always a big piece of it. And then enriched opportunities. This is a component of what we do, but really what we find is that opportunities need to be created. There are lots of great programs out there, but most of the people that we work with are people who have fallen through the cracks and don't fit into some of those programs. So although there's some amazing work being done all over the capital region, we still have to be willing to create new programs. And so one of the ways for that is, again, not expecting people to have to pass to meet social expectations, and designing programs for people, or instead of designing them for them, we want them to be with them. So I have that backwards on the slide. I apologize. We want to develop programs with people, not for people. So in collaboration. And one of the ways that we've started to do this more and more is by looking, again, we have these close ties to the research and universities and teaching, is by using community-based participatory research methods, but in a setting that works, like in the type of setting that we work with. So a CBPR approach, if you're not familiar, holds researchers and stakeholders as equal partners in the research process and has the goal of wanting to improve practice, education, or bring about some kind of social change. And this works with marginalized populations where community members are also researchers. Research is done with people all together. Okay, so this is kind of the thinking that has led us to even exist, to be honest. Equality fitness wouldn't be something if it wasn't for the community telling us that we needed to exist. And all the programs that we create are co-created with the people who we support. So we've kind of taken that and put it into more a recreation, sport, physical activity, movement experience type of model, where the individuals decide what programs we offer. That's why if you look on our website, it doesn't say here all of our program offerings, because people need to tell us what they want, when they want it, and how they want it, and then we work with them to make that happen. So we can't promote in general, like here's our 6-week program of this and this happening, because that's not how we do our work. So we learn from the community, and then we do the labor of making it happen. And one of, for sure, our biggest success examples of that is our community youth, or kind of a youth group, a social group, they call it, where everyone who comes to this group is neurodivergent, identifies as neurodivergent in some way. A lot of them are diagnosed with autism. And basically what we do is this is led by the individuals. It started from me already having individual connections with them and saying, oh, you want to make friends, you want to be social. Well, how would you want to do that? And everybody unanimously said, well, bowling is a good activity. So I pulled together the 4 or 5 people at the time when we first started and said, let's go bowling together. And I had conversation cards and put all this prep in, and I didn't need to. They all got together and they were all excited that there were other people who were there bowling. They are all so accepting of each other's quirks and social needs. So sometimes people are on their phones, sometimes they're not at all. Sometimes people are chatty, sometimes they're not at all. Sometimes people just want to sit, they don't want to participate. That's totally fine. And they choose all the activities that we do. And they have thrown me for a loop, I have to say. They've, like, when they said they wanted to go to a karaoke bar, I did not think that was going to be a good thing. That was one of the most successful nights we've had out. They continually blow my assumptions out of the water. We're now almost at our 2-year mark with this program. We meet twice a month. And it's just incredible. They now want to go to day trips to Elk Island. They're discussing overnight trips to Jasper. I don't know how I'm going to make that happen, but that's what they want. I'm never telling them no. And they all want to go to a nightclub to go dancing, not a pub, not live music. They want a nightclub to go dancing. So that's also another challenge that I have to work with them to figure out how we can make those kind of things happen. But by using those CBPR methods, this program has been an absolutely unbelievable success. And again, my rule is I have to shut up. It's not my program. It's not my, I have to leave my assumptions at the door. And I am still, after 2 years, being constantly blown away by the autonomy they're facing. They want to host a barbecue for all of the people who come to Equality Fitness instead of just their own group. It's just absolutely unbelievable what we've seen happen in this group. And that is from using CBPR methods. So just an example of how this can actually work. So just a few more images of that group. We do now say everybody has to be over 18 because they often want to go to bars or pubs. They very rarely have a drink, but they do like to go. And so we need to be over 18 to go into those settings. Okay, so in summary, again, I said physical activity as an ally, that anthropomorphism, and I really meant it. Okay, allyship is defined as an act of support for the rights of a minority or marginalized group without being a member of it. Well, physical activity isn't really a member of that, but it is the perfect venue, the gateway for change, for improvements, for joy, for friendships. And I've consistently seen these ways. So to be an ally, and physical activity does all of these things, right? Leverages influence to promote accessibility and inclusion. What an amazing way to do that. Speak up against ableism. We can do that through physical activity experiences. To show support, be willing to learn, educate, and focus on that sphere of influence versus our sphere of control. We can't always control the world around us, but we can always influence it. And we can do that a lot through these physical activity experiences. Okay. So that's all I have to share with you. I'd love to have some discussion or questions if anybody has anything.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. Before we jump into the questions, I'm just going to stop recording.